A fan once asked me if German soldiers in World War II could eat a pound of sausage, a pound of Big Elbow, and a pound of fried pork chops every day. When was the weight in Germany calculated in pounds? 3 pounds of meat a day. Who can bear to eat so much? Even if Germany can eat it, German pigs can't bear it. The food supply of the German army was different at different stages during World War II. In the early and middle stages of the war, especially after receiving support from France, a major agricultural country in Europe, the German army's food standards reached the best. In the later stages of the war, the German army also experienced a stage of eating tree bark and grass roots, but no matter which stage, the German army could not produce 3 pounds of meat a day. In World War II, the German army assigned food rations to different levels according to the location of the troops and the tasks they were responsible for. The first level is for the combat troops on the front line, the second level is for the troops in the occupied area, the third level is for the domestic garrison troops, and the fourth level is for domestic office civilian staff, of course, according to the workload and degree of danger. The first level has the highest food ration, and then it decreases step by step. According to the German Army Supply Force Guide, the German Army's standard food equipment for individual soldiers in 1942 was the standard for first-level combat troops because military bread is 750 grams, butter or lard for bread is 45 grams, and cooked meat is 120 grams, which is what fans call sausages, fried elbows, and pork chops, etc. Depending on the combat area, smoked fish, cheese or bacon are sometimes used. In addition, there are jam or artificial honey, 200 grams, baked potatoes 750 grams, various raw meats 120 grams, vegetables 45 grams, ketchup 15 grams, coffee or black tea 8 grams of snacks, or a bag of chocolate, 7 cigarettes, or 2 cigars and other items. If the troops cannot be supplied normally during the march, the troops also prepare special rations for them, most of which are canned food and biscuits. Of course, these meal standards are not absolute. Anything can happen on the messy battlefield, and the food provided will change at any time. At that time, Germany had 5 meals a day, including breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Lunch and dinner were relatively simple, and only lunch was the main meal, which was also the only hot meal. In the German army, lunch became 3 meals, and of course lunch was the most abundant. The main dishes were meat soup. Standard thick broth usually includes various types of meat such as beef, red pepper, cumin powder, potatoes, etc. The Germans would make the soup thicker, and when eating, they would pair it with black bread or pasta and sauerkraut. This diet is similar to the stew in northeast China, especially in the cold winter battle. A pot of spicy beef soup can directly restore the health bar. Among these meals, the most consumed is bread. There are many kinds of bread in Germany, such as rye bread, mixed bread, multi-strand bread, etc. The taste is sour and salty, mainly to preserve these breads. They are usually made into 750 grams apiece, which is exactly the daily supply of a single soldier. In the early stage of World War II, each German army group had 2 bread companies under its jurisdiction, and in the late stage of World War II, it was changed to a large bread company, in the bread company of the German Infantry Division. A platoon was equipped with 2 oven trailers, a dough trailer, a 6.5 kilowatt generator trailer, for bread transport carriages, a water carriage, an officer, 7 sergeants, 39 soldiers, and a baker with 30 people. The second platoon was equipped with 3 bread baking trailers, 6 bread transport vehicles, an officer, 9 sergeants, 39 soldiers, and 30 bakers. In order to keep up with the German Blitzkrieg, the German army was equipped with fast-moving bread baking trailers, which were Type 105 and Type 106. The Type 105 can bake 80 standard 750-gram bread at a time, and the Type 106 is twice as much as the former, and can bake 160 breads per oven at a time. The trailer has 2 military officers, equipped with 3 bakers and auxiliary personnel. Such a bread company can bake 400,000 loaves of bread in a month, which is the guarantee of the entire German frontline belly. In addition to bread, the German army also has a large amount of coffee and tea. Although Germany does not produce coffee, it stockpiled a large amount of stock before the war. However, the quality of German coffee is really not very good. When brewing coffee, various seasonings are added, even dandelions. Only the German troops living in Italy are in a better situation, because the coffee there is antibacterial. In addition to coffee, there is also black tea. Of course, Germany does not produce black tea either, and it also stockpiled stocks before the war, so the situation of drinking tea is much more normal. In addition, there are supplementary foods such as chocolate and various beverages, which also ensure the stomach of the German army. In the early and middle stages of the war, the German army won victory after victory, which also ensured the sufficiency of supplies: wheat from Ukraine, cheese from the Netherlands, dairy products from Belgium, candy from Denmark, beef from France, and fresh fruits and vegetables from Italy and Spain fed this army. The ruled people throughout Europe were hungry to feed the Third Reich. With the defeat of the war, the German army began to be unable to bear the logistical supply in 1943. The German army was forced to change animal protein to plant products, and milk was restricted to civilians. The extra milk was made into butter and supplied to the front line. After that, Italy withdrew from the war, and oranges disappeared from the German table. In 1944, the Soviet Union almost recovered all the territory including Ukraine, and France was liberated by the Allies, so the meat, eggs, and wine were greatly reduced from the German table. On April 20, 1945, the birthday of the mustache, he had 500 grams of sausage, 500 grams of rice, 250 grams of peas, a can of vegetables, 50 grams of butter, and 50 grams of coffee for one meal. These just reached the level of ordinary soldiers before the war, and at this time, the soldiers on the entire German front line ate whatever they had. What was the food like for the US military in World War II? The food of the US military during World War II can only be described as exaggerated. Apart from other things, the US military drinks more than 3 million bottles of Coca-Cola soda every day, and the bottle caps of these can already circle the earth. Millions of kilograms of various canned meats are eaten every day, especially those beef meats that are tired of eating, which are directly used to wipe leather shoes in order to have a bite of ice cream. The auxiliary fuel tank of the fighter plane is directly filled with milk, and then the milk is frozen at an altitude of tens of thousands of meters. These are not jokes, but the real deeds of American soldiers in World War II. At the same time, in other small participating countries, they have been poor and white, and ordinary soldiers are grateful to be able to fill their stomachs. In comparison, these American soldiers are simply here for vacation. How good are their meals? During World War II, the United States mobilized a total of 12 million soldiers to participate in the war. Although the number was large, with strong logistical support, these 12 million people were not only full, but also ate quite luxuriously. At that time, the United States had eaten ABCDK 5 kinds of rations. Rations are also called housing rations. They are usually at a base of the U.S. military and are some distance away from the front line. All fresh foods and frozen foods are prepared by professional military canteens. They include fresh oranges, milk and cereal, fried eggs and bacon, toast and donuts, margarine, jam, coffee meat strips, Maryland fried chicken, bread slices, milk cream, gravy, tender peas, fresh baked potatoes, green onion salad, radishes, soybeans, lettuce, hot rolls or biscuits, bananas, and lemonade made from fresh lemons, etc. During holidays, everyone can also eat steak, turkey, and other peas. These foods can come from the local area or be airlifted from the rear. Rations are the most in line with the daily eating habits of Americans, giving soldiers a taste of home when they eat. B rations are also called field rations. This type of ration usually includes various canned foods, pickled foods, and other pre-processed packaged foods. B rations generally do not need to be refrigerated. They are convenient to use in field kitchens and taste acceptable, so they are widely used. Usually, when field kitchens process B rations, they are paired with some fresh food that can be obtained locally. B rations are called emergency rations. In fact, they are a piece of military chocolate that can provide enough calories. This is a life-saving food used in emergency situations. For example, if the strength of the front-line combat troops is too high or they are besieged, and there is no time to eat regular rations, they can directly have a piece of high-calorie chocolate to instantly restore their physical strength. Among all the rations, the most concentrated is the C ration, which is a single soldier ration, including 6 small tin cans for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and an accessory package. Among these 6 cans, 3 are meat cans called M components, and 3 bread cans are called B components. There are many dishes in the M component, including meat and beans, meat and vegetables, meat and macaroni, noodles, bacon, egg noodles, pork, rice, sausage and beans, pork and beans, bacon and lima beans, chicken and vegetables. Such rich food takes into account nutrition, calories, and taste under any conditions. Ingredient B also includes biscuits, mixed compressed cereals, sugar-coated peanuts or raisins, instant coffee, sucrose, instant lemon powder or orange powder, fruit candy, jam, cocoa drink powder, and brown milk sugar. The attachments include 9 cigarettes, water purification tablets, matches, toilet paper, chewing gum, and can openers. The last type of K ration is actually the ration of C ration. The single weight and type have meat, which is mainly prepared for special arms such as paratroopers and tank soldiers. In the reputation of the US military, it belongs to the inferior food that is neither full nor good. In addition, the Indian troops in our expeditionary force have been eating the US K ration for a long time. The above is the standard of food that an American soldier can get in a day during the frontline combat period. As long as you are not fighting on the front line, all meals and supplementary foods are unlimited in quantity except for some items such as ice cream. If the German army's food represents various meats, and the Japanese army represents the river, then the U.S. Army represents Spam luncheon meat. This is a canned food of composite meat, of which 60% is meat and 40% is mashed potatoes and vegetable puree. Due to the high meat content, there are 15 grams of fat and 7 grams of protein for every 56 grams, which can provide soldiers with enough calories. In the middle of World War II, with the gradual increase in the number of participants, the company producing luncheon meat reduced the meat content in order to increase production and save costs, resulting in a decrease in taste. For this reason, the soldiers on the front line of the U.S. Army were very dissatisfied. They called luncheon meat a mixture of snot and meat, cut it into thin slices to wipe shoes, and only chose luncheon meat when there was nothing to eat, and used luncheon meat as sludge. Only the U.S. military dared to waste the same thing like this, whether it was supported by the Soviet Army or the British Army, or the Japanese and German troops who were captured as trophies. It was a rare delicacy. At that time, in the black market around the world, Spam luncheon meat was definitely hard currency, especially the Koreans who praised it. A few years later on the Korean peninsula, Koreans often went to the trash cans around the US base to open treasure chests. When I opened the blind box and saw Spam luncheon meat, wow, it was really a golden legend. It was too luxurious when it was cooked with rice cakes, kimchi, and instant noodles. It was simply the best thing Koreans had ever eaten. Since the ingredients come from the US military, it is called, yes, hot pot has since become a delicacy in Korea. During the entire World War II, the United States produced billions of cans of luncheon meat, providing a large amount of meat for the entire anti-fascist front. Although luncheon meat is small, it reflects the strong food manufacturing capabilities of the United States at that time. What did the Soviet Army eat during World War II? Our impression of the Soviet Army is black bread, borscht, and then secretly took out a bottle of vodka from his arms and stewed it. In fact, this was the level in the early stage of the Soviet-German War. Before the outbreak of the Soviet-German War and in the late Soviet-German War, the Soviet Army's food was really good. Before the start of World War II, due to the performance of the Soviet-Finnish War and the three German Reichs, the Soviet Union began to improve the treatment of frontline combat troops. A combat soldier can eat 800 to 900 grams of bread, various rice, macaroni, 200 grams, meat 150 grams, fish 100 grams, bean powder 15 grams, butter and other animal and plant fats 30 grams, vegetable oil 20 grams, sugar 35 grams, tea 10 grams, and salt 30 grams every day. In addition, you can get 300 grams of various vegetables, 500 grams of potatoes, 20 grams of tobacco, and seasonings such as ketchup, bay leaves, pepper, etc. Every day. You can also get 3 boxes of matches, 3 boxes of cigarette paper, and a piece of soap every month. The food and supplies of the Soviet Army were relatively backward. The soldiers still had to roll their own tobacco. Coffee was not a standard supply. Tea was also pitifully small, but the quantity was relatively abundant, basically meeting the needs of the soldiers. After the outbreak of the Soviet-Soviet War, especially between 1941 and 1943, the German army occupied a large area of Soviet supplies, especially the Soviet granary Ukraine, which led to food shortages. This has always been a serious problem facing the Soviet Union. Later, in several sieges such as Leningrad and Stalingrad, the German army tightly blocked the Soviet army, and effective supplies were also used to transport important combat supplies such as guns and ammunition. Food is often placed in a secondary position, which further exacerbates the shortage of food. This period was the most difficult period for the Soviet Union, and the supplies that the front-line soldiers could take each time were very scarce. On September 20, 1941, Order No. 312, approved by the People's Committee of Defense, stipulated that the front-line soldiers must reach 103 grams of protein, 67 grams of fat, 587 grams of various carbohydrates and sugars per day, and the total calories were 3,450 kilocalories. Although the data is relatively simple, it still does not meet the requirements. The food that the soldiers on the Soviet front received was very poor, and they often did not eat enough, especially the staple food bread, due to the shortage of various types of wheat. A mixed sawdust black bread that can be used as a brick appeared. This is very different from the black bread of the German army on the opposite side. This kind of sawdust bread once became the main food for Soviet soldiers. A piece of bread can be eaten for several days. It is not only unpalatable but also difficult to digest. The only benefit is that it can keep you hungry. Even with such bread, soldiers only have one piece of ration per day. Lieutenant Sergeyevna of the 32nd Infantry Division of the SS recalled that we did not eat well. We were only allowed to get one piece of bread a day, and occasionally a few potatoes. We had to march hard for 7 hours every night. Sometimes the road was rugged, and we even had to march in reverse. Nikolaevich, the platoon leader of the 1st Disciplinary Platoon of the 199th Infantry Division of the 57th Army, said in his recollections that during the Battle of Stalingrad, the army gave us a small amount of bread every day, sometimes hot water and a pinch of flour. Relying on these, we persisted in fighting in the cold environment. From the memories of these people, it is not difficult to find out how serious the food shortage of the Soviet army was at that time. Bread is usually paired with soup, such as cabbage soup. The Soviet Red Army has a kind of cabbage soup with a very nice name, called shuki, which is very common in the Soviet Red Army. This kind of soup is easy to make and saves time, and can supplement vitamins for soldiers. The soldiers used aluminum boxes to hold a large box of food, which really quenched their hunger and thirst. The Soviet Red Army also had a kind of food called kasha, which is actually porridge made from buckwheat noodles. The Soviet Army had such poor food. What did they rely on to survive? That is wine. This nation is particularly good at drinking, and it must drink. A few years ago, there was a news that the price of alcohol in Russia had increased, and many residents who could not afford alcohol bought detergent and mixed it with water to drink as alcohol. Coupled with the ice and snow, many people were poisoned or frozen to death every day. Even so, there are still many Russians in the United States and Japan who continue to buy detergent. They think that they can be poisoned to death, but they must not die of greed. During World War II, Soviet soldiers could live without bread and borscht, but they could not live without vodka, according to statistics. During World War II, the Soviet army consumed 2,751 liters of alcohol. Ranking first in the world, the Soviet command once issued a special order on the rationing of alcohol for frontline soldiers. Each soldier on the front line was issued 100 grams of vodka per day, and tank soldiers were doubled. But excessive drinking before the war was prohibited. It can be seen that vodka plays a role in ensuring the combat effectiveness of frontline soldiers. In 1943, the Soviet army won a great victory in Stalingrad, and the war situation began to develop in a direction favorable to the Soviet Union. In addition to the strong assistance from Britain, the United States and other countries, the Soviet army's food has been significantly improved. The aided food includes flour, dehydrated vegetables, beans, sugar and canned meat, as well as cream lemon, margarine, milk, egg powder and coffee. Among these supplies, the Soviet people's favorite is spam luncheon meat. This luncheon meat was cooked into meat paste, spread on bread, sprinkled with salt and raw onions, and eaten with great pleasure. Sasef recalled that we really didn't know how to feed our army with luncheon meat.